So we've seen a huge tumble, across all cryptocurrencies, a bit of a spike today. What is going on?
So today, last I checked, the large caps are up around 10%. The mid caps are up even more than that. It's been really interesting with the mid cap index to see how the mid caps move, which I think was hard to have visibility into previously. So I think prior to this week, we saw a huge drawdown, and I think that was an overreaction to the sort of procedural extension of the VanEck ETF filing and the outright rejection of the Winklevoss filing. And today the market's rebounding. I think potentially investors and traders think that the market corrected too far.
The SEC, Spencer, still doesn't seem comfortable with these ETFs and continues to reject them. What's your short and long-term outlook on the volatility?
Sure. I mean, as far as the SEC goes, I think they're running out of reasons to disapprove some of these things. So some of the surveillance sharing type arguments and underlying surveillance of these crypto spot markets is going away because some of the biggest exchanges like Gemini and Coinbase have set up surveillance sharing type things that should appease the SEC. And meanwhile, we're seeing many products listed overseas. So I think they're running out of reasons. I don't think volatility is really the core of it. I mean, at the end of the day, all early stage tech is volatile. When Facebook reported earnings a few weeks ago, there was $120 billion of value erased in after-hours trading alone. All of Bitcoin today is only worth $113 billion, right? So if it went to $0 today, it would be smaller losses than what Facebook did in after hours.
But a lot of people would lose a lot of money.
True, absolutely.
So, Hunter, talk to us about what you launched today, these additional indexes and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, Bitwise introduced the first cryptocurrency index fund. We're the leaders in indexing in crypto. And today we launched 3 new indexes. So we have the Bitwise 10, a large cap index, but we also introduced a mid cap index, the Bitwise 20, a small cap index, the Bitwise 70, and a total market index. We announced an advisory board, which includes Spencer, who's the head of research and partner at Blockchain Capital, which is a leading venture firm, Matt Haugen, our global head of research, who was previously the CEO of ETF.com, and Shrikant Dash, who was the global head of research for S&P indices, sat on the S&P 500 index committee for almost a decade, and then led indexes at Bloomberg.
What's demand been like?
Yeah, so over the last few months, this is a great question. Over the last few months, we raised a few $1 million a month. I think what we've seen this month will be larger than last month. I think what we've seen is that there's a huge amount of interest, and a lot of people are wondering on the timing. They don't want to catch a falling knife. They know that they want to do something, but they don't know when. We talk with the largest institutions that you'd imagine, the large consultants, endowments, pensions. All of them are interested. We did a webinar recently with 500 advisors, and 75% said they would consider an allocation of crypto. 80% said their clients were asking about crypto. So I think the interest is there. And the question for people is getting comfortable with what their thesis is going to be. That was the top issue mentioned in that webinar. And then what timing makes sense for them. So there's not a sense that there's a rush right now. Do they want to come in now with the idea that prices are low? Do they want to wait and see how things play out if they get lower, or wait until there's more consensus internally? So that's what we hear.
Spencer, the co-founder of Ethereum, said he thinks that trader types are driving the volatility that we are currently seeing, but that the burgeoning ecosystem is actually getting stronger. Would you agree with that assessment?
Undoubtedly. I mean, certainly the trajectory is very clear. I mean, the industry continues to gain more developers. There's more institutional support, whether it's firms like Goldman Sachs announcing that they will be rolling out a trading desk related to crypto. In general, I mean, custody providers coming online. The trajectory is very, very obvious. But what we see is market cycles where things tend to go up faster than they should expect, than they should, and they go down faster than they should, right? And the same thing happens particularly in these markets because they're so retail dominated, right? This is one of the first markets that we've seen, a financial market where retail investors were first before institutional investors, right? Which means in general, if retail investors are a little bit more emotional than large institutional investors, we go higher on the highs and lower on the lows.
At the same time, I recently spoke with the CEO of Coinbase who said mass adoption is a long time coming, especially given the fact that there are still regulatory issues in the United States, but also around the world, in Europe and other countries, there's no regulation at all.
So I think
mass adoption, how far out?
Yeah, I think that there are old regulations that still apply, and people are figuring out if there are adjustments that need to be made there. But in terms of the time for mass adoption, I think that's a really relevant point, and I don't think that Brian's wrong about that. I think it'll take time. Whether that's a year, 5 years, 10 years, it's hard to say. But I think it's safe to expect in the same way that the internet has been deployed and really valuable applications were introduced in the 2000s, after 2010. Uber was created after 2010. We would expect that the application and deployment of public blockchains and crypto assets will take some time. I think, like Spencer said, we continue to see really positive signs in terms of the number of wallets being created. I think Coinbase is over 20 million accounts. Blockchain, which is another popular wallet provider, is over 25 million in terms of the number of transactions, the number of active wallets. And so those are really positive signs, but it will take years.
Spencer, what do you think then the biggest risks? Obviously, you're both optimistic about the future of crypto, but what do you think the biggest risks and hurdles are?
I don't see actually massive risks. I think the overall time is the biggest tailwind here. So I think that over time, dealing with these crypto assets and these open financial networks is very, very difficult. It took a long time for people to adopt open information networks like the internet. It'll take at least as long for people to adopt open financial networks in crypto assets. And as such, I think it's going to be reserved, most of this market will be reserved for startup disruptors. Large incumbents like BlackRock are still saying that 0% of their clients are asking about crypto. And meanwhile, we have Hunter here saying that on a recent webinar with 500 RIAs, that 80% said they've been asked about crypto, right? So I think that this is a market that's emerging outside of the core of the legacy financial industry, but it's headed directly towards it.